Today on The Conservative Rebel, the same leftists who have spent the past few decades lecturing us about welcoming unlimited numbers of immigrants are now demanding the deportation of 59 white South African refugees fleeing racism and persecution in their own country. Some have even gone so far as to threaten these immigrants with death. Why the sudden change? Because the people Trump led in happen to have a lighter skin pigmentation than the left would prefer. The fact that the left is just as furious when normal, functional people who are fleeing legitimate tyranny come here, as it is when Trump deports MS-13 terrorists, tells you everything you need to know about what they truly stand for. They don't support immigration in principle, they only support it when it benefits their political interests. You won't want to miss today's episode of The Conservative Rebel. Ever since Trump won the Republican primary in 2016, in no small part because of his promises to build the wall and reduce illegal migration, the issue of immigration has become one of the most important and controversial battlegrounds in the culture war. On the one hand, you have the left, who claim America is a nation of immigrants that shouldn't have any identity or culture or religion of its own. They claim we somehow have a moral duty to let an endless stream of foreign nationals pour into the country, to take jobs away from hardworking Americans and sponge off their tax dollars. Never mind the fact that these people come from vastly different cultures, with different languages and religions. Never mind the fact that they have nothing in common with us, and some of them even hate our country and everything it stands for. And never mind the fact that the tens of millions of criminal aliens who have invaded our country oftentimes bring with them poverty and crime and dysfunction at every turn. Given all of this, why should we let vast numbers of immigrants, both legal and illegal, come into the country? Well, we've been told by the leftists for a really long time, because diversity is our strength. The less united we are, the stronger we'll be. Division will make our country better. We can cast aside outdated and racist ideas like national identity, unity, and heritage and move on to a post-national globalist dystopia where national distinctions are snuffed out and Christian civilization perishes from this earth. Then, uprooted from history and heritage and identity, mankind will become a monotonous blob of misery and boredom that will be far easier for scheming globalists to enslave. On the other hand, you have people of common sense who want to put America first. You have people who understand the value of heritage and culture and history and want to protect it. People who prioritize their family and their community and their country over other communities and other countries and other families like everyone else has for all of human history until a few decades ago when some radical leftists decided that that was racist all of a sudden. But the left suddenly reversed all of their positions on immigration this week. In an instant, the left did a complete 180. Leftists dropped all their stupid slogans about welcoming unlimited immigrants and opening our doors to endless refugees. They suddenly abandoned all their alleged principles and fake idealism. Why? The reason is simple. Because Trump just welcomed in some refugees from South Africa who have a lighter skin pigmentation than the left would prefer. The AP reports, quote, "The Trump administration on Monday welcomed a group of 59 white South Africans as refugees, saying they face discrimination and violence at home, which the country's government strongly denies. I want you to know that you are really welcome here and that we respect what you have had to deal with these last few years," Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau said. President Donald Trump told reporters earlier Monday that he's admitting them as refugees because of the genocide that's taking place. He said that in a post-apartheid South Africa, white farmers are being killed, and he plans to address the issue with South African leadership next week. So before we move on, I want to help you appreciate just how bad South Africa has gotten in recent years. Like the US, South Africa had anti-black racial discrimination for a long time. It just ended that in the 90s instead of the 60s. But also like the US, the second anti-black racial discrimination ended, anti-white racial discrimination began. Both countries have, unfortunately, never known a time without racial discrimination. For years in South Africa, there has been anti-white discrimination, even worse than we have it in the US, which people are starting to wake up to how bad it is in the US. The country recently enacted a law allowing the government to seize the land of white farmers without compensation, to give it to black South Africans. That's right, the government of South Africa is openly plundering the land of its own citizens based on nothing but the color of their skin. This is racial socialism. This is the government pitting people in South Africa against each other based on the color of their skin. And if you have the wrong color of skin, if it's too light, then your basic civil liberties are null and void. You no longer have basic human rights in South Africa. The government can just take your land from you and hand it out like Halloween candy. Hand out the loot to whoever it wants. But recently, it's gotten far worse than that. Radicals outside the government have brutally murdered thousands of white farmers since the end of apartheid in the 1990s. In 2022 alone, over 300 farms were attacked and 50 people were murdered in the most brutal and horrific ways you can imagine. One 79-year-old farmer was clubbed in the head with an iron bar, then slit in the throat so he slowly bled to death. These people have also tortured their victims for brutally long periods of time by pouring boiling water down their throats. You'd think these shocking atrocities would draw universal condemnation from everyone in South Africa, but you'd be wrong. Instead, its political leaders openly encourage it. They're either silent about it or they encourage it. Here, for example, is Julius Malema, the leader of the far-left, openly anti-white Economic Freedom Fighters Party, openly calling for the genocide of white people in South Africa. Here he is chanting to a wild crowd of thousands of people, "Shoot the Boer, kill the farmer." Listen to this psychopath for yourself.
Shoot to kill, kill our, shoot to kill, come on sir, kiss the Boer, the farmer, kiss the Boer, the farmer, brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa, attention.
This is the leader of a serious political party in South Africa, openly calling for genocide. This is Nazi-level stuff here, okay? This is the type of thing the Nazis would have chanted about Jews. That's what this is. So don't believe for a second the media narrative that everything's fine in South Africa. The claims of anti-white racism are overblown. A prominent politician is openly calling for the death of white people based on nothing but their race. And he was about as explicit about it as you can get. And many South Africans love him for it. You can't see the video, of course, because this is an audio podcast, but the people in the crowd are smiling and singing along with their hands in the air, having a fine old time, calling for white people to be mass slaughtered. Imagine if a prominent American politician did this chant at a rally, except he called for black people to be killed instead of white people. The entire world would be filled with righteous fury and instantly condemn it. There would probably be a civil war to prevent that guy from ever getting into power if he got close. And yet our government, under President Trump, is pretty much the only government on the face of the earth that cares about the plight of white South Africans. Our government is the only government on earth that cares. So it's in this context that these 59 refugees are fleeing to the United States. This is what they're coming from. So I know it's stupid, but let's pretend for a second that the left doesn't hate white people. Let's pretend that the leaders of the left and the media are not evil to the core and that they actually have principled beliefs on immigration. They actually consistently believe we should welcome people in this thought experiment. Let's pretend that for a second. Operating on that assumption, we would expect them to gladly welcome these 59 refugees into the United States. These people are fleeing persecution. What, to a leftist who supports immigration, would be more good and just than letting refugees flee tyranny and come to our shores, especially racism? When we look at how the left has responded to this, we find the opposite is true. Even though they've spent the past few months crying that the worst scumbags on the face of the earth have been deported to El Salvador, terrorists, drug traffickers, all of those types, they're gone and they're crying about it. They've been saying these people have every right to be here. We can't deport them. So they've done that. What do they do when 59 functional human beings, law-abiding, with families, who already share our language, already share many aspects of our culture, and have a common Christian European heritage with most Americans, show up? What do they do when that happens? They suddenly stop pretending to care about immigrants and instead start screaming about how terrible this is, even how this is a conspiracy by President Trump to import white people to do a great replacement of black people. So, to give you an idea of how off the rails the left is on this, I'm going to quote from an article from The Root, which is a self-described newsletter giving you black voices and ideas that delivers black news and black views. Because apparently there are racially segregated news companies that completely exclude non-blacks based on the color of their skin, and yet not only are allowed to continue to operate, but are regularly read by a devoted fan base. We know this would be impossible if there was a newsletter that gave its readers white voices and ideas, and only reported on white news and white views. Everyone would condemn that as racist, and it would never get off the ground. Yet this black-only news outlet not only exists, apparently, but is regularly read by many leftists. So anyway, the good people at The Root were very upset that Trump dared to let refugees fleeing racial persecution in their country come here, because they have a lighter skin color than the people at The Root do. They are absolutely livid at the thought that 59 more filthy, worthless white dogs are now in the country. Here's their headline, quote, "Black America reacts to Trump welcoming white people from South Africa, a nation that brutalized black people." Quote, "Many consider Afrikaners the worst colonizers in history. So Trump giving them refugee status is rubbing black folks the wrong way. Leave it to President Trump to not only expose his racial bias, but to also piss black folks off at the same time. Dozens of white South African refugees, and they put refugees in quotation marks, were just welcomed into the country under orders from Trump. But if you know anything about the history of white colonizers in South Africa, then Trump's new move should scare and infuriate you. Alright, we're already going to have to stop, because according to the root, we should be scared and infuriated because Trump is letting in 59 refugees who are fleeing racial persecution and the literal threat of genocide. I know that word gets thrown around a lot by a lot of morons, but this is actually what some South Africans want if we take them at their word. They want a genocide of white people. You heard the chant, because the country they're fleeing had anti-black racial discrimination throughout its history. Now, I would ask the author, are you sure this is what you want to do? Are you sure you want to make this issue about the history of South Africa? Because, as I'm sure you're aware, many tribes who lived in South Africa before it was settled by whites were vicious, barbaric cannibals who would literally exterminate entire villages of enemy tribes and gleefully feast on their dead bodies after the massacre. Yes, white people did do some bad things to the blacks who lived there, but nothing close to that. Nothing close to it. So if you want to talk about the history of South Africa, sure, let's have that conversation. Let's have an uncomfortable conversation, as the left would say, about the cannibals. Yes, there was some brutalization of black people in South Africa. Terrible things happened to black people. The vast majority of it, and the worst of it, was done to black people by other black people in South Africa. But all of that aside, is this really the standard for immigration that you want? Should we not let immigrants come to the United States who are from countries that committed atrocities in the past, or atrocities in the present? Should we stop letting, say, Muslim jihadists from countries infested by terrorists to the United States? By your logic, that's what we should do. But oh yeah, that's right, Trump tried doing that in his first term, and you called him a racist for it. Is this the standard you really want? Because by this logic, immigration would be completely illegal from virtually every nation on the face of the earth. If you read history, people have always done horrible things to each other, literally everywhere. So you want to stop all immigration? Is that what you want? Or is that not really what this is about? Is that standard not really what you believe in? Is this not really why you're upset? Could it be that you're just an anti-white bigot? Is that a possibility? I think it is. And I think it's the only explanation for your hypocrisy, in fact. Anyway, I'm going to have to subject you to a little bit more of this stupid piece, unfortunately. It goes on, quote, "Many see the move as a slap in the face to black and brown migrants who Trump has demonized over the past decade. Let's never forget when he and Vice President J.D. Vance accused Haitian migrants of eating the cats and dogs of Ohio residents. Because, by the way, they actually did eat cats and dogs, just so you know. So on X, the article continues, you can bet black folks called out the hypocrisy of the Trump administration. One user wrote, quote, so they don't have a problem with refugees and immigrants coming into their country, as long as they look like them. Other folks simply suggested for Trump to send them to a different country. Send them to Australia, one user wrote in all caps. I thought you people disagreed with deportations. Do you not disagree with deportations? Do you think that deportations are legitimate in some cases? Because if you say that, that is a major concession. Because if it's legitimate in some cases, then obviously one of those cases is a wife-beating MS-13 terrorist. That's obviously a case when deportation is good. Like, if If there are only certain circumstances when deportations of illegal immigrants are good, that's one of them, obviously, but yet you people have spent the past few months crying about that very guy. Here's one of my personal favorites. The article quotes from another moron on X. "They are not refugees. Stop calling them that. They are settlers leaving South Africa, where they literally had all the privilege in the world, for America to supplant black and other POC Americans and replace the immigrants the Trump administration is kidnapping and deporting." What's this I see here? This woman says Trump wants to replace blacks and so-called people of color with whites from South Africa. Sounds suspiciously like the Great Replacement. I've been very reliably informed by very trustworthy persons, is a racist conspiracy theory you're not allowed to speak of, or you're a Nazi who deserves to burn in hell. That's what I've been told. So let's think this through for a second. When tens of millions of foreign nationals who are almost exclusively non-white are imported into this country with no background checks and no requirement to assimilate, they couldn't possibly be intended to replace the American population. Nothing to see there. Totally normal. Totally normal stuff for a country to just suddenly start doing that to itself. But when 59 South African refugees come here, that can only be a nefarious conspiracy of the Trump administration to replace the black and Hispanic and so-called people of color population with whites. So the standard is this: when tens of millions of foreign nationals who aren't white come into the country, you can't ask any questions or be suspicious about it at all, or you're a racist. But when literally 59 white immigrants come in, that's the real Great Replacement. 4 times that number of refugees came into the United States every single day under the Biden administration. You're crying about 59. 4 times that came in every day, and you never noticed. And I know this is a theme that I point out a lot, but I only say it because it's true. It is hard to fathom how anyone can be such a flagrant hypocrite and yet have so little self-awareness and be so narcissistic and egotistical and stupid at the same time that they don't even realize how hypocritical they're being. I cannot wrap my mind around it. I just can't. Now, as terrible as all of this is, unbelievably, it gets even worse. Listen to this deranged woman on TikTok threaten these refugees with death and tell them that black people will be hunting them down.
Good morning. This is for the South Africans who are going to be entering the United States. This is just a public service announcement. I just wanted to make you aware that the black people who were students during apartheid, we're grandmas and grandpas now, and we have the air of Gen Z. One more thing, I also want to let you know that our president, he has Secret Service, and you will not. I also want to tell you that black people over here are empowered. These are just public service announcements. When you get here, sit your ass down and don't touch nothing, because you don't have Secret Service. Okay. Now have the day you deserve.
So shameless. She's laughing a little bit. She's smiling and laughing as she infuses the fear of death in them and tells them that people will be hunting them down. What? What is this? This is KKK stuff right here. Okay, the left is being exactly what they accuse us of being. They're being the racists here, ignoring that there could soon be a genocide of white South Africans. This is insane. If you doubt that there is anti-white racism in this country, if you think that DEI is well-intentioned and that the left has good intentions, they're good people, all they want is to do what they think is best, look no further than this to see that you're wrong. Look no further than this. Here these people are, threatening them with death, threatening to hunt them down, talking about how these white people are coming in to replace all the black people, how it's a nefarious conspiracy by the Trump administration, ignoring the brutal racism and persecution they face here, and the utter distaste for the white immigrants that's absolutely dripping from every post and every statement that we've read. These people are legitimately filled with a hatred for white people. These people are legitimately filled with race hatred and bigotry. What else could you call this? You cannot explain a total 180 like this, that they're just dumb. No, even dumb people wouldn't do this. The only explanation for why they've gone from let anyone in who wants to come, no background checks, no nothing, just let them all in, the only explanation for how they've gone from that to great replacement style rhetoric is that they hate white people. They hate them. They have no principles at all. They have no genuine convictions at all. They do not actually support immigration. All they care about is advancing their political interests and securing their chokehold on political power. If immigration will accomplish this, then they support immigration. If you let in just 59 people who might not vote for them in, then they'll start screaming about it. Because they have no principles. Again, these are fascists. These are people who only care about force. Might makes right. They're moral relativists. They have no principles, no morality, none of it. All they want is survival of their ideology, perpetuation of their ideology, and the snuffing out of sanity in this country. Part of the reason that they're so upset, at least that the more intelligent and evil ones are upset, not the bottom-feeding morons who we read a lot of their posts, is because these people have seen the logical endpoint of DEI. They have seen what happens when racial double standards are allowed to continue. They have seen what happens when you are told that you are systemically privileged or systemically discriminated against based on the color of your skin. They know what DEI really is better than anyone else. These white South Africans, they have been through the ringer. They understand that this is not a well-intentioned thing done by well-meaning people. This is racial Marxism, because the whole way that Marxists advance their political interests, the whole way they get political power and get a following, is historically, if you read the Communist Manifesto, they divide people of the nation they want to destroy into different factions. Historically, that's been based on wealth, the proletarians and the bourgeoisie. It's been the rich and the poor. That all changed after the fall of the Iron Curtain. A lot of communists decided that as their economic ideas had been widely discredited when the Soviet Union fell, there were other accesses of oppression that they could divide people based on. So they went with gender. The males are oppressing the females. Divide people there. They went with race. The whites are oppressing the blacks. Divide them there. They went with all this weird LGBT stuff. Divide them there. So all these different things, it's racial Marxism is what it is. That's what DEI is. Gender ideology is gender Marxism. Feminism is another form of gender Marxism. All of this is intentional. All of this is intentionally designed to divide the country so that it can be conquered. And these South Africans know better than anyone else what happens when you hate your own history, when you hate your own heritage, when you put the label of oppressors on white people, and when you dehumanize white people. They have seen the catastrophic consequences of doing that. And unless we want the same consequences for ourselves, unless we want our country to become an authoritarian dictatorship like South Africa, we had better heed their warnings. Thanks for listening to The Conservative Rebel. Please follow the show and share it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you on the next episode.